Welcome back. In this lecture, we're going to be working on functions in Python. So we're going to learn how to use functions. So what are functions, by the way? So functions are reusable pieces of code that allows us to write the same code multiple times, right? So we can create one function to do the same thing over and over again. It's just like you taking a plastic bottle and using it for several other reasons that is best known to you. So functions allows us to write a code once and use it over and over again. It is one of the things that will make your programming 10 times more faster. So all you've been learning so far are simply ways to make you program, logic of programming. Now, function is one of the basic superpowers that you have in programming to create code way more faster. So you can break your code into smaller functions that does the same thing over and over again, right? So what we know about function is it is reusable. It allows clean this up. It allows us to reuse, the same block of code. So now you have a little understanding of what functions are. So let me show you how to create a function. So a function has three basic parts. You have the name of the function, 2, the parameter of the function, then 3, the block of code or the executable code or block or executable code, right? So these are the three parts of a function. So let's hop into our code and let me show you exactly how that would work. So search for our IDE. Put it up. So the first part, you have your name. And to declare a function, use the diff keyword. This means define. It's short form for define. Then your name of your function. Let's call this test function. Right? Then your parameter, which goes in your parentheses. Let's say name. Give this a name. Then your executable block. Print name. Right? So to call this function, write text, supposed to be test, then pass in the name, which is, let's give it a random name, Mary. Then also call this function, you see it prints the name. So the function prints something out, right? So this is the basic view of what a function does, right? So most times functions are meant to return something. They are not just meant for printing out just any random thing, right? So to create a function that returns, use the return keyword. Now to create a function that returns, let's use this again. Let's create a function called total, using our earlier example, total money end, right? We could pass our price as the price of item and what I gave us, then the quantity, let's call this quantity, or the number of items we get to sell, right? So we use the return keyword to return the sum of both items. This is price multiplied by quantity. So now to print our total money end, we simply pass in our function name, then pass in our parameters into the function. Say the price of each item last time. See, it gives you an auto a box that shows you the parameter of the function. So the price will say $20 and the quantity will say $10, right? Then once we call this, we get the answer. Let's see. Okay, I needed to close this up. Okay, $200. So you've seen how to create a function, how to return an item from a function. Let's talk about what function scope are. What it means for a function to be scoped. So in Python, we have your global scope and your local scope. So a function has what is called a local scope. So let me give you an example. This is a function. Let's call this greet. It doesn't take in anything. And let me define a variable inside of our function. Call it first. Let's call f name, which is first name is equals to James. Then last name equal to root. And we are printing out, we are going to be using the string literal sign. So say good day. Then use the format method on strings, then pass in our first name, and our last name. Or let's just call this, let's call the greet method. Remember, when you are calling your function, always include these parentheses. This shows that you should run the function, not just call the function, not just point to the function, you should also run the function. We have good day James fruits, right? So this variable here is locally scoped. So if I try to print this variable that is defined inside the function block, I'll get an error. Okay, as you can see, there's an error. F name is not defined because this variable is locally scoped inside of this function, right? So there's also what's called the global scope. So the global scope is any variable that I declare. Let's call this middle name, name equals to Tama, right? So this m name is now what is called globally scoped. So let me just copy this right here, paste this in, then access. Let me just add this right over here. Let me just add this right over here. And name. Run this again. Let's call the greet function. Good morning, James Tama. And this m is scoped and can be seen outside of the function because it was not defined in the function, but it was defined outside of the function. It's a global scope. So any functions, objects, or method would be able to use this globally scoped variable, but they will not have access to this locally scoped variable because this is only scoped within this block of code. So let me just print this out. Okay, as you can see, Tama comes out very, very well. So let's do a basic example of a function that actually does something. So let's just create a function that calculates the time it takes for an individual to move from, let's use a basic function. Let's say time it takes for an individual to move from a location when we are giving the distance and the distance and the speed, right? We'll say, we'll call this function time of travel, right? So we say we're given the distance and speed, right? So the function will take two parameters, the distance and the speed. So to get your time, you say time is equals to, what's the formula, which is distance, right? Time it takes meter per second squared. Yes, distance divided by speed, right? So return time. So always return a value from your function. If it does not return anything, then it returns a none. It returns a none, it returns nothing. So print, take our time. So with this, you can create a function for almost anything, for anything basically that you could reuse. Instead of me typing out this anytime I want to calculate distance between distance traveled, I will just get I want to calculate the time traveled. I'll just use this function that I've created to just pass in my parameters. Let's say we move 20 meters at 2 meters per second or per hour, gets 50 seconds or 50 hours, depending on the one you're using. So as you can see, anything I want to calculate, any time that uses the same type of code, I can just change the value and it automatically changes for me, which means I don't need to rewrite the same block of code over and over again, which allows reusability. This is one of the greatest tools you will use in Python or any other programming language. We are going to use, you can combine this with your for loop, your if-else statements, and any other thing in Python, your variables and all of that, to create reusable chunks of code. So the next thing we will be looking at is, what is module? So a module is a module is what we call a condensed or a packaged group of usable or highly usable code. So module, this is how you spell this, your module. It's a packaged group of highly usable code. So in Python, we have different types of modules, or as some people like to call it libraries. So this module, what they do, they contain different functions, different variables, different parameters, and all of that does a particular task. So for example, you have your time module, your built-in time module that comes with Python. It allows you to get the time on your system, to calculate time, to calculate sleep time, and all of that. Then you have modules for creating games like a Tinkt time modules. You have your Pygame module. These are modules, these are code. Instead of you writing your code from scratch, you can just borrow some code and some logic from this module and use it to create your game or anything you want to create Python. You have your Python image library, PIL. You have your 3D game creating library, Pandas 3. There's so much library. Some are built into Python, while some you have to install them, right? So let's just work with a module. Let me show you how to work with modules. So the first thing you need to know about working with modules is this. To allow a module to be used in your command or in your Python code, first use the import keyword, then pass the name of the module you want. for a built-in function, you don't need to download the module into your system. It's already pre-built into your system. Just import it. Then once you've imported your module, to access your variable, you use the name of the module. Then if it's a function, and in modules are more like classes or objects that has functions inside of them. So like a method. So a function inside of a class or an object is called a method. So to access this, as you can see, it gives us a list of all the functions and all the methods we have inside. So we can just access any one of them. Like this is a method that prints out the correct time of your code, right? So we are going to access this. Then let's print out this method, which gives us the correct time on my system. So we have Wednesday 20 September 27. So this is a module. If I wanted to write a code that gives me the time on my system, I would have had to go to my system, look for different things. But this module just allows me to access this functionality immediately. So say you are creating a game that uses the current time that simulates the real world. You can use this module to work with your game. There are also different other things you can use with module. You can use the time module and use the sleep method to tell your Python, okay, print, say for example, say print, okay, let's create a function called sleep check, right? Then this function doesn't take anything and it prints. So the first thing it does is print. Okay, first it sleeps, Z's, then 8, sleep for a bit. Let's say we are going to use the time module, then okay. Sleep method, let's sleep for 5 seconds, then print up, okay, up. You want to call this sleep check. Want to call this, it prints out everything, it sleeps for 5 seconds, then it prints out the last value, right? So you can see it's normally it would have run immediately, but now we added this method to make it sleep. There are various other things you can do with module. This is just a simple example of a use case of using module. So we also have other modules. We have the system module, which allows us to do input and output with allows us to read from the terminal, read values from the terminal, and all of that. So this is the same method used to use module. So let me show you how to import an external module. First, to import an external module, make sure when you are installing your Python, you allow it to use pip, to install pip for you. So to do that, you go to, once you've done that, you go to your command line, then you run as admin, say yes, then you simply type, for example, pip install, then the name of the module you want to install, Pygame. So I'm just going to use this Pygame. Then it will take some time to install, but this is basically what you do to install any module. And you see the right down at the bottom right over here. So you need to ensure that you have data so it's installed because it's downloaded online. As you can see, it's already installed on my system, so it's not going to install. So that's it for this class. So far, you've learned how to create a function, how to return values from the function, the parts of a function, then how to use modules. So in the next class, we'll be going into what are objects and classes in Python before we move into our capstone project. So see you. If you have any question, you can leave it in the question and answer section or comments down below, and I'll get to you as soon as possible.